This is the Mulligan Stew Podcast. I'm Terry David Mulligan. When we started the podcast almost 300 episodes ago, we had a subtitle to it. It was the Mulligan Stew Podcast, Music, Film, Food, and Wine. Music kind of took over. Film still shows itself. Not so much food and not so much wine, remarkably, seeing as how I'm in year 17 of Tasting Room Radio, a wine and food show that started in a studio in a barn on the Naramata Bench. But some stories deserve a stage upon which to play. One right now is the wine industry in British Columbia, which is going through just hell, increasing amounts of fires during the summer, so much so that they blocked the highways, they being the authorities, and sent everyone home. All of the tourists that were coming to the Okanagan went home or went somewhere else. And then 2 winters in a row, the chill factor in the Okanagan was minus 27. At that point, vineyards die. And then, just this year, letters arrived to some 200 wineries from the liquor authorities in Alberta saying, you are sending wine to people in Alberta, the wine clubs, without going through us. You have to go through us. And either stop sending or we'll take your wine off the shelves in Alberta. But Alberta is one of the great places to buy wine simply because it's open thinking, reduced taxes. It's great to shop for wine in Alberta. But apparently sending wine to Alberta is a whole nother thing if you happen to be their next door neighbor. One of the true leaders in the Okanagan wine industry doesn't have a badge for it. Her name is Sandra Oldfield. And she has a company with her husband, Kenn, called Elysian Projects. And they help wineries and farmers. They advise business plans because she knows what she's doing. Sandra Oldfield came to us from California and became the leader of Tinhorn Creek in the South Okanagan. Now she's advising, she's mentoring and speaking out. A couple of years ago, when we were told by another Alberta government that you could not buy wines in the Okanagan and drive them back into Alberta across the border. And it got nasty there for a bit. I took some wines to the border, hoping to be arrested or at least detained. And Sandra Oldfield ordered a shotgun from Winnipeg or Manitoba or Saskatchewan, and it arrived at her front doorstep. She made the point that she couldn't send wine to Alberta, but she could order a shotgun. And she still has that shotgun. She'll talk about that. Without taking sides here, friends, because I have a lot of friends in Alberta, a lot. I don't quite understand why this was set in motion, why it didn't become a conversation. Rather than playing itself out in a headline, why not just have that conversation and get it done? Work it out. Side-by-side neighbors, Canadians, fighting Canadians. Good grief. I hooked up with Sandra Oldfield in Victoria. I needed to know if there was any progress forward in these conversations between Alberta and British Columbia. That story then developed into what her plan was. Her plan was to order Alberta-made spirits and Alberta-made craft beer to her front door in British Columbia. So she couldn't send wines to Alberta, but she could order spirits and beer from Alberta, and they would arrive at her front door. It's not a level playing field, friends. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Here's a conversation with Sandra Oldfield. And if I can find it, if I can get my hands on it, there's a video of her opening these boxes and saying what she wants to say to the camera with her husband, Kenn, playing cinematographer. Here we go. My name is Terry David Mulligan. This is Tasting Room Radio, and I am joined by Sandra Oldfield, who is the co-partner of Elysian Projects in Oliver, with her knowledge of the Okanagan and wine and business and the people involved in the industry. But because she's here being Victoria on the Rock, an actual knee-to-knee conversation with Sandra Oldfield. It's incredible. What brings you here?
I'm here for a British Columbia tourism conference. I do a lot in tourism, and our big conference is right now in Victoria, getting ready for it. I'm very excited because I love the people in tourism, and it brings me back out to Victoria, which I also love.
Are you giving speeches or listening to speeches?
Oh, I'm definitely here for the content to receive it. So there's going to be, there's a lot going on right now in this province when it comes to tourism, and all varied amount of speeches for the next 2 days, breakout sessions and workshops and things like that. So very excited.
We have mutual friends. They tell me that 2 boxes have arrived at your front door in Oliver, and I'm dying to know what were in the boxes, where they came from, and why they arrived to your door. Tell me about this.
Okay, well, I used to be a winery owner, but I'm not anymore, and so I'm what you would call a consumer now. Okay. And as a consumer, British Columbia producers, wineries were recently hit with a letter from the Alberta Liquor and Cannabis branch saying that they had to choose between either having their wine on the shelves in Alberta or selling direct to their consumers in Alberta through wine clubs and things like that. And of course, I mean, you and me, Terry, we've been dealing with this for a couple decades now. It's ridiculous. Restrictions on the flow of wine across this country have been ridiculous for a long time. So that's my long-winded way of saying I ordered some craft spirits and some craft beer from Alberta, both from a retailer out there as well as direct from a producer. And they've arrived at my house now. And it only took a few days, and credit card went through right away and delivered to my door, and that's not proper. And so I'm just wondering why the AGLC is not getting its own house in order before it comes out and starts telling British Columbians, you as a winery can't be doing what you're doing. They don't have their own house in order right now. I don't know if they know what's going on out in BC. I just know that they've made the producers out here feel like they are criminals by selling wine across the border. And, British Columbia did something great many years ago. They opened up its borders for all parts of Canada to ship wine to its consumers. So, for example, if you're a small winery out in Nova Scotia, you can ship to a believer of your wines out in BC, and there was no ramifications. But, those provinces, including Alberta, didn't reciprocate. They didn't open their doors. And so we're still stuck with producers in British Columbia not being able to openly ship their wines out of province. But the flip side of it is, it is not legal for retailers in Alberta and producers in Alberta to be shipping spirits and beer to our consumers out here. And so I was just kind of interested in the fact that...
Of course you were.
I was just interested in the fact, kind of similar to years ago with my gun, if you remember that, which we can talk about in a second. But, I was just interested in the fact that, how can they be doing this? I'm sure I'm not going to be able to do this, receive this alcohol in the mail, because British Columbia hasn't allowed for spirits and beer to be let in direct to consumer. And there it is, just arrived at my door.
And you wouldn't haphazardly just put together a box. You would think about what you wanted in that box coming to your front door. What showed up?
Craft spirits that are distilled in Alberta and craft beers that are brewed in Alberta. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to tell you who the retailer is or the producers, because I really have no beef at all with retailers and producers and consumers in Alberta, because they're all small businesses just like BC is. So I don't need to out them. I don't need to tell you who they are. My problem is with the Liquor Control Board out there. That's where the issue lies. And I think it's a double standard that they're not allowing British Columbia producers into their province, but they're allowing licensed retailers and licensed producers to be able to ship to our people. So
this is March 5th, Sandra. We still don't have an answer as to any conversation going on between the provinces. Are you hopeful? What do you hear?
first of all, if it's just a matter of British Columbia opening its doors to distilled spirits and beer that's made in another province into our province, I really don't see where our province is going to have a problem doing that. Years ago, we opened up our doors for wine to come in from outside the province, and it did not do detriment to our own wine industry. So we have a great example of how opening the borders did not ruin our industry. So I don't, if it really is coming down to the fact that BC hasn't opened its doors to spirits and beer, I think that will happen. And so I'm very hopeful that if that's the problem, that we can reconcile this. But, I have years ago ordered a gun online from, I think it was, I can't remember, it was Manitoba now or Saskatchewan, but it arrived the next week. And I was making the case that you can, I can order a gun online, but I can't seem to ship direct to consumer my wine. I still own that gun for a reason, is because I said I'd get rid of it as soon as all provinces allowed in BC wines. And that still hasn't happened. So I still own that gun. And I just feel like this is a broken record. We've been dealing with this for years and years, and we never seem to get close. So I can be hopeful that, the provinces are going to figure this out. But I have to say, I can't base that on any past history of success.
Shotgun, Sandra Oldfield from Elysian Projects. Oliver, business as usual is a phrase that's always bantered around. What does business look like in British Columbia wine and the Okanagan in relations with Alberta?
One of the interesting things about Alberta making BC wineries choose between their wine club customers and, retail and restaurant customers out there is we are now going into a difficult time where we've gone through some winter kill. Right now, product is fine, but in another year, there'll be less wine available. So, I don't necessarily feel like it's hurting the wineries in a big way right now, but because there's less product out there. But, the whole point of being a small business in BC is you have to stay very flexible and nimble. And in order to do that, you have to have a full range of options for where to sell your product. Yeah. And, narrowing it down so that you have fewer options is really hurting the wineries in BC right now.
You have hope.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the people that are in this industry, and that's what I do now. I mean, a lot of Elysian Projects is looking at how we can support wineries and other businesses up their game when it comes to financial acumen and how they treat their employees and all the rest. And I run a conference every year called Fortify, where I really try and get them some good information on how they can up their game. So I'm always hopeful that people are always striving to get better. It is a difficult time right now in this industry, for sure. There's no getting around it. But, it seems like some of the difficulties that wineries have been faced with are bringing them together a little bit more. They're talking a lot more. They're banding together. They're doing more cooperative discussions together. That's all super positive.
I don't think in dark terms, but I'm thinking that we're going to lose farmers. We're going to lose personnel. We're going to lose vineyards. We're going to lose the industry that we recognize now. Who knows what it will look like in 5 years?
It's definitely going to be going through a change. There's no getting around that. The hope is always that we learn something from the past. If there were things that we didn't like about the industry before, you hope when you come out on the other side of big changes that you're able to put things in place that are better for the next people coming in. And as long as people, that have a memory are still in this industry, I feel that those people will be fighting for, a better industry when we come out through some of these transitional changes that we're going to go through.
Frankly, part of me thinks that we're not going to recognize it in 5 years, but that's just me. And by the way, those 2 boxes will not be opened, or at least the contents, and same with the shotgun, until things get worked out?
No, not necessarily. I mean, okay, fair enough. We'll hang on to some of the beer and some of the, whiskey or whatever. We'll hang on to some of it for, being able to toast if the borders ever open across this place. But yeah, I'm not hanging on to it forever.
What does the future look like then? What's it going to look like down the road? Will we be surprised at what the small farmer and the wine growers and the wine industry in British Columbia will look like?
I think we'll be surprised in one sense. And I'm not necessarily saying we'll be surprised that it's worse. It could be surprised that it's better. There's hope for that. When I came into this industry, had just gone through a big replant. That's when I joined this industry, and that was after NAFTA. And, things that had been done before NAFTA were not, like, we felt that we were pioneering this industry back then. And we've got much better viticulture and much better winemaking techniques. And I think the people in the next 5 years will come in, will feel the same way. Like, hey, this is a new industry. We're doing things much better than I was ever doing it. And that's how it should be. Like, it should be that way. We should keep progressing forward. So I do agree that some part of me feels like maybe it won't be recognizable, but I don't necessarily feel that's a bad thing either.
Can tourism help?
It's all about tourism as far as I'm concerned, because even prior to some of the disruptions we've seen with wildfires or cold winters, the majority of the wineries that I work with and the majority of the wineries in British Columbia are under 5,000 cases. And all those wineries, they sell so much, almost all of what they make out their front door. That's all tourism.
What changes are we going to see on the shelves of the big wine stores? What are we going to notice and say, where's the bellwether? Where's something that rings an alarm?
I just can't answer that right now because I really don't know where we're heading there. I do know that there will always be wineries that are making British Columbia products, and there will always be consumers in British Columbia that seek those products out. But, we've gone through a lot of changes with even retail in the last, 10 years with grocery coming in. And, but I will say one thing that's really unique about BC is these small producers, they still don't have a lot of product to sell. So online, direct to the winery, or coming in through their cellar door, I don't think that's going to change a lot. I think that is where the authenticity still reigns, and that part I think will be preserved.
Okay, last question, and it's more a statement from you. If you're sitting opposite your counterparts from Alberta, maybe online, maybe not in person, what one thought would you leave with them to make an impression?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about this, so it's a knee-jerk reaction that I give to that question right now. I really haven't thought about it, but I would say, why are you going after fellow Canadian producers? There are so many things that a liquor board could be combating to protect its own industry at home, including imports, how those are brought in, how they're priced, how they're shelved. Why have you chosen to make going after fellow Canadians your mandate? Don't we have better things that we could be doing in this country than doing that? And, I am now fully Canadian. I don't walk the dual citizenship thing anymore. I gave up my U.S. citizenship during COVID, and I'm fully Canadian and have been for many years, and it baffles me how we can go after our own citizens this way. So that's what I'd be asking the AGLC right now.
Sandra Oldfield, who is the co-partner in Elysian Projects in Oliver and is very, very busy answering the phone and the emails and the texts. Find her if you can. Thank you.